Hello. Get ready for a great show.
Black space is a place for us.
Real people with real issues.
Discussing real topics.
Black space.
A safe space for our community.
Hello, I'm George Middleton, your host this evening on this podcast episode of Black Space Live. For the topic of our discussion today, we're going to examine the question, is the current state of the Black family by design? I would like to take this time briefly to encourage you to like, subscribe, and share this podcast. In other words, don't be selfish with this content. Share the love. You can catch Black Space live on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and Spotify. And you can also catch us on Anchor FM, Podcast Addict, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeart Radio. Let's take a quick moment to just let our star-studded panelists, who need no introduction at this point, you know them well. They have just torn down the walls in previous discussions. And so every time they show up, we have to reinforce windows, doors. It's like hurricanes, tornadoes, all of, just something come through. So batten down the hatches. Welcome, panelists. Just do your opening welcome. Say whatever you feel like saying, what's on your mind. Just happy to have you guys back. Let's start with China.
Hello, everyone. China here, from Mississippi, but living in Texas. Ready to get started.
Right on. Welcome back, China.
Thank you.
Daniel.
I guess that's on me. I am the Daniel Williams, aka Mr. One of One. None before, none to come. I'm glad to be here, and definitely looking forward to this discussion.
Original, there never would be. You can come closer than close.
No, often imitated, never imitated.
I'm gonna work on my intro next time.
Ooh-wee.
Coming out like that. And I'm just trying to Mississippi. No, I'm gonna work on mine.
Mm-hmm. It's all in the branding. It's all in the branding.
It's all in the branding.
But here's what I didn't do. I didn't go get something from my lips. I need to go get something from my lips.
You know
what about
what?
That's why we can't have nice things.
It's okay. I can take it. It's I'm the only woman on here tonight, looks like. So I got my work cut out for me, but we're good.
Trust me, we are not complaining, China. Trust and believe. So, hey, I want to do a quick little monologue to kind of set up this discussion, because this is a really power-packed question. And I love questions because, I come from a therapeutic paradigm. I'm a therapist. And the purpose of a question is ingenious because if it's done right, it makes the person being asked the question, it requires them to think, even if they never give you the answer. And when I ask a question, I'm not looking for the right answer or the wrong answer. I'm looking for the authentic answer, which is different. And coming from a therapeutic perspective, I don't like to operate in a framework of morality to come to solutions. Not that morality is not important, but in terms of the process of trying to repair something or resolve something, the morality template usually makes things worse. It provides an obstacle to you getting to the effective part of the solution process. Solutions, you need an objective process to get up to use the right criteria with which to assess the problem, then to resolve it. 9 times out of 10, if you start with the objective process, it will come into alignment with your whatever your moral template that you're using. But we try to start with the moral template, thinking that everybody's operating by the same moral template, and that's where the disconnect comes in. Because we might even say, even people in the same church, their morality template's not the same. So, that's my take on it. So anyway, that's why I love this question. And so I hope to have, great critical analysis and thought on this discussion. But yeah, the state of Black America, look at what's going on in our country today. First of all, most people don't realize that racism is officially declared a public health crisis. It is the new public health crisis. And most people just don't really understand that. And even when they hear it, they can't connect to that like they can COVID-19. Because with COVID-19, they understand, well, you can social distance or you can mask and there's a vaccine. But with racism, there's no social distancing, you can't mask yourself from it, and there's no known vaccine for racism. So what does it mean to people when you say, well, racism is a public health? What does that mean? But statistically speaking, it has dire outcomes for the quote unquote Black family. It has dire outcomes for the Black family. It has dire consequences for everything, because remember, a public health crisis knows no boundaries. It doesn't operate by racial boundaries. It affects everybody, but it does affect some worse than others. If you want to be, discriminatory about the impact. But what's the difference between bad and a little bad, or bad and not quite as bad? So that's not a metric that I want to use to improve my situation by. So you look at things like redlining. That's a serious quality of life issue that most people don't realize still exists. There are multi-million-dollar lawsuits paid out, millions of dollars annually, against banks and financial institutions that are committing practices of redlining. Still in 2023, you still have in the African American community paying higher taxes on property for lower value than other communities. You have what is it? When you get your property to go for your second
appraisals.
You have the appraisers will actually rate your property based on this color of your skin, to the tunes of millions of dollars, not millions, but to the individual, thousands of dollars difference in appraisal property value. So there are several famous cases out right now where homeowners have whitewashed their home in order to get the top appraisal amount, still today in 2023. You have the unemployment gap. Here's the thing that we don't realize. In good times or in bad times, the African American unemployment rate is always twice the rate of the white population. So it doesn't matter whether times are great, like in the times during the Obama reign, we were still, as an unemployment statistic, twice the rate of white America. You know, white supremacy is about status quo. White supremacy means one color's on top, one color's on the bottom. So it doesn't matter what system you go in, you're going to see that same pattern. Education. Right now, education is under serious attack. Knowledge, history, and culture is under direct attack, especially as it pertains to the African American history that they're calling critical race theory. And they're passing bills to ban something that isn't there. And then they're using that fake ghost bill to dilute African American curriculum. And we're the only culture group this is occurring, that this is happening to. The only one. No other culture is having their history re-examined and erased. So, I think in closing on this little monologue here, I'm reminded of this cliche: even a broke clock is right twice a day. But collectively, for the African American community, on a statistically proven basis, we're not even operating at broken clock success rates. We're not even doing that. We are literally, when I look at our situation collectively, we are literally the Spike Lee character Can't Get Right. So from there, I want to open it up. And the first ask of the panelists today, beginning with China, is present your theory on the state of Black America and how it got, the state of the Black family and how it got where it is today.
Well, of course, we all know where that started from, right? We know where it stemmed from. Our families were ripped apart, and that was by design, right? And if you bring it up to today, they still want the Black family to be apart, torn apart. But at the same time, we also have to take some type of accountability for ourselves and our community. Because if we won't fix what's broken in our community, it's not going to get done. We can't look to them to come in and rescue us, because that's not going to happen. It'll never happen. But for the overall topic of this conversation, I do believe it was done by design, and I am ready to dig a little bit more into that.
Okay, great. Daniel.
All right, we're gonna have a lot of work to unpack. So glad that you already noted that this might be a multi-session discussion.
Yes.
I'm gonna start with this one because this statistic, when I first saw it, caught me off guard and caught me by surprise, and I had to go do some digging.
Okay.
Did you know that until 1970, a Black woman was more likely to be married than a white woman?
No.
Which means this situation where our families have largely either been torn apart or the genders have been at odds is a relatively modern phenomenon. And so when we have these discussions, we have to look at what changed from the 1960s prior to the civil rights movement and from 1970 and on. And once we do an examination of the situation, now we can start saying, okay, where did this change happen? What contributed to the significance in the change? And what are some things we can do to, if not systemically resolve these issues, at least start being a part of the solution individually and having that individual accountability?
So that implies the the lessening role and involvement of the African American male.
By far.
If until 1970, that means that prior to that, that the African woman could count on having male support, having a man as her first line of defense, and then it started to dilapidate or degrade beginning in the 70s. So that twist happened. And I remember on a previous show, I believe you were on the show with doggone it, my brother. His name's going to come to me in a minute, but he's a statistician as you are, and he brought up the welfare practice of extending welfare help to the African American woman, but with the condition that no man could be in the house.
I want to talk about that as well.
Okay, expound on that, please, because it was really important.
Absolutely. So it is necessary when we talk about is this condition by design, we look at the policy that has created these situations. One of them being where, and it's multiple things, right? Around the 70s is when you started seeing manufacturing jobs going overseas. And I think in the last discussion, we spoke about how in the 80s, Detroit was the wealthiest city in the world. And Detroit right now is so dilapidated that there are literally blocks that they're selling for pennies on the hundreds of dollars in an effort to revitalize those communities. So we saw manufacturing jobs go overseas. And for most of our people, we lived in cities that were close to urban and manufacturing centers. You send the jobs overseas, so the man loses his job. And the government says, well, we will step in and we will support the woman and the child under the condition, as you noted, that the man cannot be in the house. There cannot be an able-bodied man in the house if we are supporting the woman and the child for the jobs that we allowed policy to send overseas. What's ironic and interesting to me about that, and almost not just ironic and interesting, we're going to use a third word, insidious, about that, is that everybody considers help to women and children in inner cities to be welfare. No one considers farm subsidies to be welfare.
Right.
But they are. You're paying farmers not to produce a product that they make a living producing. And farm subsidies do not require that the male influence is not a part of the household in order to qualify for it. So on one side, you have a form of welfare that goes predominantly to one section of the population, and that requires the elimination of the male presence. And you have another form of welfare that goes to another segment of the population, unpaid, in the mind, that doesn't require the elimination of the male, right? So if you just look at those two versions of welfare, who is considered to be impacted most, and what the stipulations are, you can see right there you're creating that wedge between the two, the male and the woman in the household.
Now, and there's another series that we've been doing regarding relationships as it pertains to the African American, and we've been doing multi-series, and the particular topic is who hurt you. A conversation on relationship trauma, and we're on part 50 something, I think. But the most recent one we did is addressing the gap between the African man and the African woman here in America, because that's what this policy is doing. It created that gap. And China, I would love to get your perspective on this, not to actually do that show, but I think it's related. So I'd like to bring that perspective in. And I'm going to give you my male experience. in doing this particular topic specifically, and in just my surrounding conversations in between shows, I've noticed the intensity or the prevalence of this mindset that contributes to this gap between us in our own community as male and female. It occurs to me that the more successful the African woman is in our community, the less attuned she is to the gap and the contributing factors to that gap between her and her male counterpart. So like we're talking about a systemic piece that is factually known to be a policy that for us to take advantage of the policy, we have to be separate. But then when we talk about the gap, it's as if the successful African female blames the male versus acknowledging the systemic pressures that her male counterpart is under daily. This is an attack on the male, even though it's shrouded in policy and practice. It's actually a systemic attack on the male. Can you give us your perspective? It was a great discussion I had with the previous. It was Desi. Desi was the panelist on that, and she brought really great perspective. So I'm sure you have some as well. So I'd like you to speak to that, if you can.
Yes. As a single Black woman, I will admit that it's hard. I literally had a conversation with a girlfriend yesterday, and we were out having drinks, and the conversation turned to this. She was actually going to Enterprise to rent a car. Mm-hmm. Some guy that was out there cleaning the car. But as they started conversing, he mentioned that his wife was a nurse practitioner, right? Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Right. Everyone needs love. Everyone deserves love. But as far as keeping the Black male out of the home, some of them are playing into that. And then other women are turning to say, well, you know what? If I can't have this man, if I can have that man, this one, he may not be exactly where I want him to be, but this is where I'm going to go, right? And I said that to say, you have so many successful, beautiful Black women that are single and by themselves. And that's not necessarily where they want to be, but that's where society has placed us, right? It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. Sometimes people say, well, you need to lower your standards. You need to do this. You need to do that. You don't have to lower your standards for everything, but some things you do, such as getting those benefits, getting assistance from the government. You have to actually lower your standards. I actually know women who purposely will say, I won't do A, B, or C because this is going to get cut off. And it's sad that we're actually put in those positions. Some women are put in those positions. Myself, thankfully, that I am not. But I don't know what I would do if I was in that situation. I probably would settle or diminish myself as well. So it's all just a dirty cycle and a dirty circle that we're running in. And but as Mr. Daniel says, we still have to take accountability for our parts in it.
Understood. Yeah, because that, the strength of the African woman is historically and now she has been the adhesive for our community just to be resilient. She's been that resilient protective factor. She's had to, in many cases, play both male and female roles. She's had to be the nurturer and the fierce protector because just survival. And it's still occurring today. Although I would say that the system has discovered that level of resiliency in the African female, and they found ways to start degrading that. And when the woman goes, it's a wrap. As it pertains to the family. When the woman goes, it's a wrap. When I was coming up, I'm a product of a divorce. Although in my later years in my life, my father was definitely in my life, and I'm so grateful. But I know very well the sacrifice my mother made. She raised four of us. Every day, we were the first thing she had to deal with, and the last thing at the end of the day. And I was a knucklehead. I mean, by myself, I was a knucklehead. She had to deal with my craziness. And yet she was on that job every day. Somehow there was always too much month left at the end of the money, but we never starved. I mean, but now you're not working as a therapist. I don't see my mom and these mothers today. They don't have that skill set. They don't have that resiliency. They don't have that commitment, that mindset to say, you know what, I don't care what situation is, my child, my family, my bills, it's going to get handled. So, and it's not because of a weakness of the female. That's what's important to understand. It's not because there's a character flaw in our women today. These are systemic pressures that over time, even resiliency needs resources. I liken it to the analogy of driving on E. Y'all know what driving on E means, right?
Yep.
And the only people who've been through it know what that means. And as a collective, as a community, we have been driving on E. But you can only ride that for so long. Resiliency needs resources. And that's our weakness. The problem is not the character of our community. The problem is the lack of access to resources. So, okay. Well, let's move on because I know we're trying to be efficient with our discussion time. Here's my next assessment question. And I bring this to China first. Currently, what are the current efforts, in your opinion, most likely to be effective in repairing our community? And what do you estimate as the timeline for it to take hold? What current efforts today are most likely do you see most likely effective in fixing our solution? And what's the timeline for its implementation and fruition? China.
So, a few weeks ago, oh, it's been a while, but I don't remember exactly. So maybe you can help me out. But you said something to the point of when Black men are better, our community would be better. Do you remember saying that?
Yes.
I wholeheartedly agree with you 100%. We have to start there. Men do not understand how important and vital their presence is in the home. It's important. If you see a young man outside, actually, let's just say you can see two guys outside, two young men outside, two boys. The one who has his father in his life, he's more than likely is going to be more respectful. He's going to be courteous. I've actually had a little boy, he was about 6 years old, right outside. I was coming out there taking my trash out because I'm single. Um, and he offered to help. And I was like, oh wow, I didn't know the kid. I didn't know him at all. But as I walked around, a young man, Black man, he said, have you seen my son? I said, I don't know your son. He said, oh, he's about yay tall, on a green scooter. and that was him. You know, if you have a little girl, we all have social media. This is what we're all here for. 9 times out of 10, when you see those little girls dressing like they're grown, acting certain ways, 9 times they probably don't have a man around because the presence isn't there. And not only that, but we have to start loving each other, y'all. We have to start loving each other. That doesn't just start with the black man. We have black men and black women going against each other every single day. We can't have that. If we want to progress and if we want to move forward, we got to come together. We have to come together. So I say, of course, we have to have the male in the home. We have to have that presence, and we have to start loving ourselves. We can't look to social media. Social media is for entertainment purposes only. People look at social media. Oh, I want this. I want that. They don't even have that, right? So the timeline that I could see, I wish I could say it would be in my lifetime. But I don't see it in the next 5-10 years. I don't, because we have too many people that's wanting to have a hot girl summer and to, all of this polygamous. That's a different topic, but you have so many people just out for self that I don't personally see it anytime soon.
Okay, so let's put some meat on the bone of one of your statements there. The man does need to reassert himself in our community as a primary role and pillar of the family. No doubt about that. Looking at the current statistical levels between the African man and the African female, for that to occur right now today, the African American female will have to adjust her standards on some level, collectively speaking. And you just gave a personal experience where that is not the most desirous of mindsets for the African American female. So how does the African American female adjust her mindset to realize that for the good of the family, we're going to have to adjust the way we're looking at our men currently in order to reassert him back to his rightful role?
Well, I will say, women, we do have to allow men to be men. Some of us, as you mentioned earlier, we're juggling so much. We're taking on both roles as mom, as dad. Even though I don't believe in that, there's some people who say, "Well, I'm my child's mother and their father." No, you're not. Let's just put that there. You're doing a great job. Kudos to you, but a woman could never be a father, right? And sometimes we have to check ourselves. We have to be more respectful. We have to let that man be the man. So women have to be able to sit back and sit in our place sometimes. And then you can see, okay, of course, I'm not going to let anyone lead me down the path of destruction. Not going to do that. Just not going to happen. However, Kachana, what I can personally do is allow a man to be a man if that's the type of man that I need to be led by. So if that answers your question.
Okay. Yeah, that's plausible. Let me take a quick moment to give a shout out to the Shade Tree Intellectual. Great. This brother I know via our many virtual chats. An intellectual, he is. I'd put him on the status of the panelists that we have here. He'd be great in discussion. But he dropped a line in here: a man shouldn't be a woman's career choice. So Shade Tree, throw some more meat on that bone for us. Give us some more context on that line before we take off with it, because we want to respect your intellect and deal with the input that you're contributing there. Daniel, to you.
All right.
What current efforts today exist that you feel are most likely to repair our situation as an African American community, and what's the timeline?
All right. Yeah. So if we're talking current efforts, I have three things that we're currently doing that we need to do more to scale.
Hmm.
I give us about a generation to be able to actually undo the effects, but they need to
Okay.
be to scale and to the effort of we need to basically be internally as systematic about the implementation as they are about the oppression.
Yes. Yes.
So
Love that. Say what?
that's
Say
that's
that. Say that one more time.
all right.
That was
We need to
powerful.
be as systematic internally about the implementation of these three as they are about the oppression on the outside externally. So these are three things that are currently
If
happening
that
that we
ain't a
need
book
more.
title.
I'm gonna put it as my subtitle. I'll put
All
it under
right.
subtitle.
All
So the
right.
first one is we need to heal. That's the very first one. There's a lot of
Okay.
trauma being carried around by the different
Mhm.
genders,
Mhm.
and they're at war with each other because we're taking out what the world is putting on us on each other. So that's
Yes.
the first thing that needs to happen.
Love it.
I do love this thing where people are talking increasing, but not to the level that is necessary, which is why we talk about scale, are talking about seeking help and
Yes.
seeking therapy, right? So that is something that is a conversation. This is a conversation my father's generation did not have,
Mm.
right? So this is a conversation that's a very real conversation. That's a part of the process. First, you have to heal because before you can partner with someone, you have to have a love
Mm.
and a strength for yourself.
For
So that's the
yourself.
first part.
Okay.
The second part, male mentorship. And I think I've spoken about this before about how important it is. China just spoke about how the young man had a father influence that taught him how to be a respectful young man.
Mm.
But I believe that every one of the biggest challenges and issues we have that and I was part of it before I started to kind of become more hands-on. And I promise you, it takes a lot more energy to do this than it does to criticize. But um, you have to you have to share your knowledge that you have gained over 20, 30, 40 years of experience with somebody who's only at 17 years old, right? Somebody who's 15 years old, someone who's 12 years old. You have to be willing to take someone's young man under your arm or under your wing and teach them what it means to be a man. We currently, and by the way, there are programs that do that, but not enough, not to scale currently. We don't have a rite of passage for what it means to be a man in our community. And nature abhors the
Mm.
vacuum.
Mm.
So, in
Mm.
absence of that,
Mm.
popular culture, social media, and media in general fill in the definition of what it means to be a man. So, that is something that we need to figure out. The third one is collaborative economics, because no matter what we say, at the root of everything, this racism is actually a system of economic oppression. It started as a system of economic oppression, meaning racism and slavery were underpinned, basically underpinned the American economy.
Yes.
Um, and when the Africans were emancipated, these additional systems, your black codes, Jim Crow, were basically systems to keep them um, as second class citizens from an economic standpoint. So one of the things, and we see that, right? We talk about Tulsa, the different Black Wall Streets. We talk about all of these organizations that serve our community, but then get targeted because they are building up the capacity of our community. So healing got to be the first thing, because you can't fix the body until you fix the mind and the spirit. Then there's mentorship. We have to take ownership of what it means to be a man, and that rite of passage that a lot of other cultures have. And that, by the way, our original indigenous culture has, but we just don't have one that is recognized across the spectrum. And then collaborative economics. Um,
Mm.
we talk about the challenges that happen, but at the end of the day, a married family, a two adult family household consistently outperforms and as individual family, individual adult household on every economic measure. So collaborative economics is kind of how you pull it all together. If we can do this to scale, we could actually fix a lot of these issues within a generation, generation and a half.
So you're saying these things are occurring, they're not occurring to scale.
They're nowhere close to being occurring to scale, but I mean, we can all look at different people. Yourself, obviously, a black therapist didn't exist a generation ago, right? Because black men did jobs that required working with their hands. There were plumbers, they were carpenters, they worked at factories, right? Jobs that didn't require you to go and get a degree.
Right.
We're talking about mental health significantly more. We are talking about mentorship significantly more. And we're definitely seeing where we're starting to talk about economics within our community a lot more. So those things are happening, but not to scale.
I love your prescription. That's a prescription, man. That's a
We
prescription.
can't just talk about problems. Also, got to talk
Yeah,
about
that's
solutions.
a prescription. And the first beginning with healing that hits me where I live because that's my profession, and
Absolutely.
it's just so important. Um, so I want to kind of play with those, and I'm sure that um, China may have some additional perspectives to add to that. But let's take a quick moment, and I know we're going to be cutting off here because we can take this all night, but I want to give Shea Tree Intellectual some time here. As you all were talking, I'm not sure if you were following some of his notes. I asked him to put some more explanation, but I'm going to read them again. If you have a single mother raising children and she has no education because the foundation goal of welfare is to keep you on it, and then you'll find the daughter's dressing more risque because he can provide for her, There's two problems with this. One is it's a horrible foundation to build a loving and deep relationship with family. And two, it tells women that the only way you're getting out of here, poverty, is to get a man, sleep with him, make him lust after you so he never leaves you, and always take care of you. And a third point that he forgot about, this keeps women from seeking out and achieving their dreams and aspirations. Women deserve their dreams too. So how does it hit you guys? What are your thoughts on the Shade Tree's perspective here?
Man, um, there's so much to unpack on that, and I know we don't necessarily have the time to deal with
Mm-hmm.
it because
Mm-hmm.
but I will say that there is a thing where um there is a expectation that a man is a provider and provides certain physical and tangible things in a relationship, but should never expect to receive something of equal value back.
Mm.
And there's some challenges with that,
Mm.
but that's a much deeper conversation than
Okay.
we have time to go into
Okay.
right now.
We're going to take that into the next series. Then that's for sure. China, how does that hit you? His perspective.
I definitely agree. That's all a facade. And again, this going back because that young girl could potentially just be looking for someone to love her. And sometimes we can replace love with a monetary gain. Someone can buy you a purse, or someone can buy you a bag, or someone can fly you out. That still doesn't mean they love you. Still doesn't mean they care about you. They want to use you for whatever have you. But that's why I mentioned that we have to start with self-love. When you love yourself, there's not much that you will accept. I love me. I love all of me. Um, there's just certain things that I will and I will not accept. There's certain things that I will and I will not put up with. But when you don't have that love, you'll fall for anything. So yes, I absolutely agree with the shade tree.
Shade Tree Intellectual.
I agree.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Much appreciated. This is great. I mean, wow. Good stuff. I want to try to answer or give my input on the solution part and kind of support both of your perspectives and how you're um, looking at our current situation. And I'll do that by just sharing with you what I'm individually doing. And I know each of you are also doing individual initiatives. And as a matter of fact, as we're closing, I'm going to ask you guys to discuss your personal efforts if you're comfortable doing it. I don't want to put you on Front Street or make you feel like you have to, but if you're comfortable here, but I want to share with you what my prescription that I think is in alignment with Daniel's prescription, which I really resonate with. Number one, to the healing. I'm a therapist. And as a man thinketh, right? And I love the scripture because it's challenging, because the fullness of the scripture is, as a man thinketh in his heart. So it's the marrying of the cerebral and the emotion. And there's power. You know, the thought without emotion, it's a great thought, but without that emotion, it has no power. But thought, uncontrolled thought with uncontrolled emotion is chaos.
Chaos.
Yes. So it's really important. And we have to begin there, because our current situation, individually, collectively, is a direct reflection of our thought process. There's no way to escape that. Even if it's not your fault, it's still your responsibility. There's a difference. So when it comes to trying to solve a problem, blame is the least effective tool you can use. It gets you nowhere. It actually, you lose more, because no one likes to be blamed. So if you're trying to get someone to be collaborative with you, blaming is not a collaborative tool. But responsibility is a whole different perspective, because responsibility doesn't require finger pointing. Responsibility requires owning and contributing yourself. That's a different perspective. So the healing is important. And so one of the things that I'm doing toward that regard with my therapeutic work is I've created a platform called Racial Deconstruction. From a statistical perspective, race is the number one stressor to our community. Race. And remember, race is a public health crisis. Racism is a public health crisis. Racism is a direct outcome of race. Remember, I said that as a man thinketh? Well, that's what race is. Race is not genetic. Race is ideological. When you think racially, you get racism. And here's the thing that most people don't realize. We're all racists. All of us, regardless of our skin color, we are all practicing an ideology that maintains the status quo of color, which is called white supremacy. And so, I know it sounds crazy, but I'm just kind of giving you the Reader's Digest version. Racism is a public health crisis because we're practicing a public health stressor, which is called race. And that begins with beginning as a racial identity. If you identify by color, you are being racist. And you're hurting yourself. And you don't even realize it. So my work is having people learn. It's educate to eradicate. That's my platform. Educate to eradicate the negative impact of race. So I'm not trying to erase race. I'm trying to educate people so that they can eradicate those negative vestiges from their own personal situation. Because as long as you practice race, guys, here's the bottom line. You will not heal. You will only continue to re-traumatize yourself. As long as you keep things in black and white paradigms, the healing cannot occur. There's no such thing as racial equity, racial unity, racial harmony. Those are oxymorons. Race and equity cannot coexist. There's nowhere in the country today where you see racial equity. Nowhere in 2023. There's nowhere in the country today where you see racial equality. Nowhere in 2023. Racial diversity is even more ludicrous. Having a bunch of people in the same room with different skin colors is not diversity. Having a multiracial residential neighborhood with people of different quote unquote races is not a synonymous with diversity either, especially when statistically speaking, one group is known to pay more in interest rates for the same house, for the same loan, with the same income and same credit score. That's not diversity. That's not racial equality. That's not racial diversity. So we're doing this to ourselves. We keep trying to take a divisive tool and make it inclusive. And you can't get there from here. That causes cognitive dissonance. It causes internal strife. And that you're now vulnerable to all the other crazy shenanigans that's going on. The other thing I'm doing personally is I am on the board of an organization called the Indie Black Chamber of Commerce. Now, philosophically, I'm at odds with the name, but I understand why the name is there. But it gets to the heart of the other pillar of Daniel's prescription, which is collaborative economics. We are the least collaborative in economic interaction and support with each other. The least collaborative. And we are a $1.4 trillion consumer group. That means we've got that much money. We've got the wealth of the fourth largest continent in the world. But all of our money goes out. So if reparations were to occur today, what would happen, guys? Think about it.
We'd give it right back. That's why I'm not even fighting for that fight. We give it right back. As quickly as we get it, it's going right back out.
So, and then I'm on a few other groups that are really building this collaborative economic mindset. And so those are the things I'm doing personally. So, man, I can just keep going, but I know I need to close. Let's see. Shade Tree said, the belief in race. Ooh, I like it, Shade Tree. The belief in race. The belief in race is white supremacy. Wow. Boom. Mic drop. So we're going to have to explore that more. We're going to have to delve into that because I think this really resonates with Daniel's prescription. So here's what I want to do. Beginning with China, if you're inclined, China, talk about in our closing anything that you're doing you feel is contributing in your own way to the solution, the prescription for the African American community.
I'm a firm believer in, reach one, teach one. We can be so forthcoming, and sometimes we have to understand that we need to, let our friends lean on us sometimes. Sometimes in our community, we tend to just go with the flow. If someone's doing something, we won't speak up. We won't say anything. As far as what I can do personally, whenever I see a young girl, I'm always talking to her. And I don't just talk so she can listen to me. I let her speak so I can try to understand exactly where she is. And then I can reach her. So what I do in my personal community, anytime I'm around any young girl, I always try to be positive. You always have to be positive because that actually it spreads out to others. So I know we're closing, so we can actually dig a little bit deeper into that, but I'll just...
Yes. Love it. Daniel, I ain't scared of you.
None of y'all. Oh
Williams,
man.
what you got to say, dog?
All right. Short version is the first thing I'm doing is working on me. Right. I
Okay.
have to practice what I preach. So, one of the biggest things that I work through is really just continuing to learn. Right. Being a lifelong learner. And then what I learn, I try to share. So that's the first thing. There is a program I had the opportunity. I actually work for a nonprofit that works in the entrepreneurship education space, largely focusing on under-resourced communities, which is a nice way to say those that have had historically less than others because they've been marginalized by policy. And through those efforts, I've had the opportunity to actually get some funding to do a program, Black Men in one of the cities out here. And that program, this is the second year we've been able to pilot it. We've been able to work collaboratively with other community-based organizations. It is above and beyond just the work that I do that I get paid for. It is on my own personal time. And it is something that continues to be probably one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done, because one of the things that I'm a huge proponent of is that it is not enough to just succeed and leave. You got to go back and extend a hand to show others, because once again, nature abhors a vacuum. And if you don't provide a positive role model experience for these young men, there are more than enough negative examples out there that they're going to gravitate towards. So that's where I'll stop. The last one is I will be launching my Chaotic Potential podcast, which will be largely built around helping others both define their purpose and then find their freedom. And so I think those will be efforts that I'm going to be looking towards, kind of helping to build the community. Once again, it's not enough to be a critic from the armchair. You got to get up and get your hands dirty.
You're either part of the solution or part of the problem. There are
Absolutely.
no in betweens.
Absolutely.
In practicing the spirit of collaborative economics, do you all have? Is there a place? Are you taking donations? Do you have products that you're selling, or anything that people need to know about?
Right now, the first cohort actually set up a website, and they're running an e-commerce business. But I have to clean up a few things with them about that. So when that is ready, I will make sure that I make that available
Awesome.
for support. We're fortunate. The program itself is actually supported by some dollars, some deep-pocketed dollars,
Awesome.
which is
Congratulations.
the greatest thing that I could ask for is for people to support the work that's being done to make the community stronger.
Congratulations. Okay. Well, I would like to just do a personal plug myself. Is you can find my racial deconstruction works on Amazon, and just look for George Middleton. And my most recent work is a children's book titled Kids Are Not Crayons. And it is a book addressing healthy self-identity and esteem in early childhood development. So it's a great proactive tool that the parent can use, or anybody working with young people can use, to have a proactive control and role in the forming of our young people's identities before all of the external messaging from all these sources come and try to tell our children who they are before they even have a chance. And again, that's all of that is on Amazon. And if you need it, and I'm also available for presentations and workshops. Just connect with me on LinkedIn, George Middleton. You'll find me, and we can do it virtually, or I can come see you. This has been great. Shade Tree, thank you very much. Daniel, your presence as always, my brother. China, there are no words. I'm going to make none. There are no words.
If we could just clone YouTube, we'll be better. Just clone y'all.
We'll take that. We'll take that coming from you. We'll take that coming from you, because here's the thing. As men, this is the thing. As men, we're nothing without that female energy behind us. We're nothing.
Nothing.
We are nothing. And you know, I have a very high opinion of myself, and I have even higher opinion of Daniel. But both Daniel and I know that without that female base, without that, there's just something in the power of femininity that without that.
I mean, the man is the head, but what's the woman?
Come on now. Come on. And we got to recognize that. And this bridge has been put in place for us to not recognize the power of our union, because other people do see the power. So we'll get into that. So that's great. And you guys never disappoint. This has been great. So to all of you listeners, viewers, watchers, have a great week. And until the next time we meet, we'll see you in the black space.